The giant prince stared in horror. The young warrior lying dead at his feet was his own son. For a moment, the battlefield went silent. The man who had defeated mighty warriors, the man whose sword had terrified kingdoms, the man who believed nothing on earth could stop him, had just killed the person he loved most. And he had done it with his own words. But that was only the beginning. Because before this story ends, a king will die, a kingdom will split apart. Two royal brothers will fight a brutal civil war. A powerful queen will secretly change the fate of an empire. And the strongest prince Benin ever produced will walk into a lake and never return. How did a prince destined for greatness lose everything? And why do many people still speak of his tragedy more than 500 years later? Stay with me, because this is the heartbreaking final chapter of Prince Arhuanran, the giant prince of Benin. If you love Nigerian history, Edo culture, and untold African stories, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments, if you were
Oba Ozolua,
who would you have chosen as your successor? Now, let's begin. Long before the tragic war between the two brothers,
Oba Ozolua
faced a problem that kept him awake at night. Among all his sons, none possessed the raw strength of
Arhuanran,
the giant prince was feared across the kingdom. His enormous size, unusual birth, and unmatched fighting abilities made many people believe he was destined for the throne. Even
Oba Ozolua
secretly desired it. But there was a problem. Years earlier, because of circumstances surrounding the prince's births, the king had publicly made a proclamation that favored
Prince Osawe, Oba Ozolua,
decided to seek answers from a woman whose powers were respected throughout the kingdom. Her name was
Iyen'Urho.
Many believed she could see what ordinary people could not. One day, the king summoned her. "I want to know," he said, "which of my sons will sit on the throne after me?"
Iyen'Urho.
Agreed. Soon afterward, she called both princes. "I have a task for you." The brothers listened carefully. "Build a ladder so tall that it almost reaches the sky. Place it against an Iroko tree. When you reach the highest point, look into this mirror." She handed each prince a mystical mirror. "What you see will reveal your destiny."
Arhuanran,
Built his ladder with his own hands.
Prince Osawe,
Allowed servants to assist him. Days later, both ladders were completed.
Arhuanran,
Climbed first. Higher, 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 until he seemed to disappear into the clouds. At the top, he looked into the mirror. Far below,
Prince Osawe,
did the same. When they returned,
Iyen'Urho.
questioned them separately. "What did you see?" she asked. The giant prince smiled confidently. "I saw myself," she nodded. "And I was holding a sword." His eyes lit up. "I was destroying enemies in battle."
Iyen'Urho.
Smiled. Then she delivered words that changed everything. "You will never become Oba of Benin." The smile disappeared from
Arhuanran,
face. "What? You were born to conquer battlefields, not sit upon the throne." The prince exploded with rage. He pulled out his sword. "You dare insult me!" He swung toward the old sorceress, but suddenly, his arm froze in the air. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not move.
Iyen'Urho.
Laughed softly. "You cannot strike me."
Arhuanran,
Eyes widened. "I forgive you only because of your father." The giant prince lowered his head in humiliation. Then
Prince Osawe,
stepped forward. "What did you see?" she asked.
Prince Osawe,
Answered calmly. "I saw myself dressed in royal regalia." The gathering became silent. My people were praising me. He paused. "I was seated on the throne of Benin."
Iyen'Urho.
Smiled. Then she turned toward Oba Ozolua. "The next king has revealed himself." Later, the king privately asked her one final question. Can destiny be changed? The old woman shook her head. No, not even for...
Arhuanran.
No. For the first time, the mighty Oba Ozolua looked defeated, because he knew exactly what that meant. The throne would belong to Osawe, and Arhuanran would never accept it. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this incredible Benin Kingdom story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, do you think
Iyen'Urho.
was right or should
Arhuanran.
have become king? Although the prophecy had been spoken, life in the Benin Kingdom moved on. Oba Ozolua knew the future that awaited his sons, but knowing the future and accepting it were two different things. Deep inside his heart, the great warrior king still admired
Arhuanran.
strength. The giant prince had grown into a fearsome warrior. His massive frame towered over ordinary men. His enemies trembled whenever they heard his name. Many soldiers secretly believed that if strength alone determined kingship,
Arhuanran.
would have been king without question. Yet destiny had chosen another path. To prepare his sons for leadership, Oba Ozolua assigned them important responsibilities.
Prince Osawe.
Was appointed,
Idubor.
meaning the traditional heir apparent. It was a position that openly signaled who the kingdom expected to inherit the throne. The announcement spread quickly across Benin. Some people celebrated, others whispered, and
Arhuanran.
burned with anger. The giant prince forced a smile whenever he appeared before his father. But inside, jealousy was beginning to grow. To compensate,
Oba Ozolua.
appointed him ruler of
Udo.
was no ordinary town. It was one of the most important settlements in the kingdom, the homeland of the king's mother, a powerful and respected territory. Many rulers would have considered it a great honor, but
Arhuanran.
did not see honor. He saw consolation. He saw second place, and he hated it. As the years passed, both princes received advisors from their father. They were known as the,
Umenge.
in Edo language, wise men chosen to guide them.
Prince Osawe.
Listened carefully whenever his advisor spoke. He asked questions, he weighed their opinions, and he often followed their counsel.
Arhuanran.
Was different. When advisors spoke, he believed his own judgment was better. When warnings came, he ignored them. When caution was recommended, he charged forward. Several times, his advisors saved him from disaster. Several times, he refused to thank them. One elderly advisor once looked at him sadly and said, "My prince, a man who refuses wisdom eventually becomes a slave to regret."
Arhuanran.
Laughed. "I am stronger than regret." The old man lowered his eyes. One day, the prince would remember those words, and by then, it would be too late. Meanwhile, another powerful figure was watching events unfold. QueenIdia, the mother of...
Prince Osawe.
Among the people, many believed QueenIdia possessed extraordinary spiritual knowledge. She was intelligent, patient, and fiercely protective of her son. She understood something,
Arhuanran.
refused to understand. A throne was not won by strength alone. It was won by strategy, by alliances, by wisdom, and by timing.
Arhuanran.
New QueenIdia's influence was growing. Every victory her son achieved seemed to strengthen her position. The giant prince began searching for ways to match her power. That search eventually led him to the same woman who had foretold his destiny years earlier.
Iyen'Urho.
The mysterious sorceress, the woman he had once tried to attack. This time, he came seeking knowledge. "I want to learn," he said. The old woman studied him carefully. "Knowledge is dangerous in the hands of an angry man." "I am not angry," the old woman laughed. Even the birds seemed startled. Then why are your fists clenched? For a moment,
Arhuanran.
said nothing. Finally he spoke. Because destiny cheated me.
Iyen'Urho.
Shook her head. No. Then what cheated me? Your inability to accept what was given to another. Those words cut deeper than any sword. But despite her warning, she agreed to teach him certain mysteries. And
Arhuanran.
became even more powerful. Stories of his exploits spread across the kingdom. Enemies fell before him. Warriors who challenged him were defeated. His reputation grew larger than life. People began telling stories that his sword could split an enemy before the victim even realized he had been struck. Whether true or not, one thing was certain. No ordinary warrior wanted to face the giant in battle. Soon, his fame reached every corner of the Benin Empire. But while Giant Prince was becoming stronger, fate was quietly preparing the event that would change everything. An event that would leave the throne of Benin empty. An event that would turn two brothers into bitter enemies. An event that would plunge the kingdom into one of the greatest succession struggles in its history. Meanwhile,
Oba Ozolua
was preparing for war, and he had no idea that this campaign would be his last. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, do you think the giant prince deserved the throne? Or was destiny right to choose his stepbrother? And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more untold stories from Benin history. Because what happened next shocked the entire kingdom. The mighty
Oba Ozolua.
The undefeated warrior king was about to march toward the battle that would end his life. The year was around 1503. By this time,
Oba Ozolua
had become one of the most feared rulers in West Africa. His name alone could silence rebellions. His armies had marched across countless territories. His enemies had fallen one after another. For years, victory had followed him like a loyal servant. But there was one warning he could never forget. A warning given by his own father. The legendary
Oba Esigie.
The great had long before his death. He gathered his sons and issued a command. Never wage war against.
Uzia.
No explanation, no discussion, just a warning. For decades, that warning remained untouched. But success has a way of making powerful men believe they are invincible. And
Oba Ozolua
was no exception. When reports reached Benin that the people of
Uzia.
present-day Edo State were refusing to recognize his authority, the warrior king became furious. They reject my friendship. His chiefs lowered their heads. Yes, my lord. They reject Benin. Yes, my lord. Silence filled the palace. Then
Oba Ozolua
stood. If they reject friendship, his voice became
If they
cold.
reject friendship,
They will meet war.
then they will meet war.
Some chiefs exchanged worried glances. Others remembered.
Oba Esigie.
Warning. But nobody dared challenge the king. The armies of Benin began to move. War drums echoed across the kingdom. Warriors sharpened their weapons. Mothers prayed. Fathers embraced sons. And once again,
Oba Ozolua
marched toward battle, confident, unstoppable, certain of victory. But destiny was waiting for him in.
Uzia.
The war became one of the fiercest conflicts of his reign. Month after month, fighting continued. Then months became years. The war lasted for 7 years. Villages were destroyed. Warriors died. Neither side was willing to surrender. Yet even during the conflict, nobody imagined the mighty king could fall. Until one day, everything changed. Different versions of the story survive to this day. Some say the king was struck by a poisoned arrow during the campaign. Others claim that after a battle, while bathing and relaxing his guard, enemies ambushed him. Another story tells of a grieving mother whose only child had died during the war. Consumed by pain, she supposedly used mystical powers to transform herself into a rat. According to the legend, she bit the king while he was bathing. The poison entered his body, and the mighty warrior began to weaken. Others insist betrayal was responsible, that someone close to him secretly signaled his enemies at the exact moment he was most vulnerable. Whatever truly happened, the result was the same. For the first time in decades, death stood before
Oba Ozolua.
the great warrior. Looked around. The man who had survived countless battles finally understood. His journey was ending. When the news spread through the camp, warriors wept openly. Some refused to believe it. Others fell to their knees. How could a man who seemed larger than life be gone? How could the lion of Benin fall? Messengers immediately left.
Ozia.
Their mission was simple: find the princess. The kingdom needed a king, fast, because whenever a powerful king dies, ambitious men begin to dream, and civil war follows closely behind. The first messenger reached.
Prince Osawe.
The second reached.
Arhuanran.
Both princes were devastated. For a moment, grief united them, but only for a moment, because almost immediately, their minds turned towards succession, and that was when the real battle began. Far away in
Udo.
the giant prince sat quietly after hearing the news. Then he stood, his eyes filled with determination. If father is buried in,
Udo.
he said slowly, then
Udo.
shall become the center of power. His chiefs looked at one another. They understood exactly what he meant. According to Benin custom, where the Oba was buried carried enormous significance. Authority flowed from that sacred ground. If
Oba Ozolua.
was buried in,
Udo. Arhuanran.
position would become incredibly powerful. Then he would become king. The giant prince smiled. For the first time in years, destiny seemed within reach. Meanwhile,
Prince Osawe.
was thinking the same thing. But unlike his brother, he had advisors who immediately began planning. My prince, one advisor said, you must retrieve the body yourself.
Prince Osawe.
Nodded. And then bury him in Ogbe. Another advisor stepped forward. If the giant prince gains possession of the corpse, everything changes. The future king's face became serious. Then we cannot allow that. What followed became one of the most brilliant political deceptions in Benin history. As preparations were made to transport,
Prince Osawe.
advisors developed a plan. A dirty, unattractive casket would carry the king's actual body. A beautiful, shining casket would carry only sand and stones. The goal was simple: confuse
Arhuanran.
and buy enough time to secure the burial. When
Prince Osawe.
heard the plan, he smiled. Let's see if my brother's pride defeats him. Back in Benin, the giant prince waited impatiently. His advisors surrounded him. One elderly advisor suddenly became alert. My prince. The giant prince looked up. The old man pointed down the road. 3 men were approaching, carrying a rough, dirty casket. The advisor immediately stood. That is your father's body. The giant prince frowned. What nonsense! My prince, I am certain. The giant prince exploded. Silence! The advisor tried again. My prince! Before he could finish, the giant prince struck him. The old man collapsed. The giant prince laughed bitterly. My father, in that
My
filthy
father?
box. He
In
shook
that
his
filthy
head.
box?
Impossible. The dirty casket continued toward Ogbe.
Impossible.
Unchallenged.
Impossible.
Unstopped. And with it went the body of...
Oba Ozolua.
A few moments later, another group appeared. This time carrying a magnificent shining casket, decorated beautifully, exactly what a king deserved.
Arhuanran.
Eyes lit up. There, he pointed triumphantly. That is my father. Without hesitation, he seized the shining casket. The men carrying it offered no resistance. Everything was happening exactly as
Prince Osawe.
advisors had planned. The giant prince proudly began escorting the casket tour.
Udo,
Certain he had won. Certain destiny had finally smiled upon him. Certain he had outsmarted everyone. Then suddenly, boom! A thunderous sound echoed across the kingdom. The royal gunshot. The signal fired only after the burial of a king. The giant prince froze. The blood drained from his face. His advisors froze. His warriors froze. No one spoke. Slowly, very slowly, the giant prince turned toward Benin City. Another gunshot echoed, then another. His heart sank. No! Whispering, no! His hands trembled. No! With trembling fingers, he opened the magnificent casket. Silence. Inside were only stones, sand, nothing else. For several moments, the giant prince simply stared, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to accept what had happened. Then reality struck him. His advisor had been right. His father had already been buried. In...
Ogbe,
And at that very moment,
Prince Osawe,
was being crowned king. The giant prince roared so loudly that birds exploded from nearby trees. His scream echoed across the countryside. The scream of a man realizing destiny had defeated him once again. And this time, he was no longer fighting a prophecy. He was about to fight his own brother. And the bloodiest chapter of their story was about to begin. The moment the giant prince realized he had been deceived, something inside him changed. The grief of losing his father was replaced by rage. The pain of losing the burial struggle became a burning desire for revenge. And when news arrived that
Prince Osawe,
had been crowned and given the title
Oba Esigie,
by the,
Uzamanihiyo,
in Edo language, they were 7 kingmakers of Benin. The giant prince could no longer contain himself. They crowned him already. The messenger lowered his head. Yes, my prince.
Arhuanran,
Clenched his fists. So that was their plan. His eyes narrowed. My father is barely buried, and they have already stolen my throne. One of his chiefs cautiously stepped forward. My prince, perhaps there is still a peaceful path. Peace! The giant prince thundered. The entire hall fell silent. Did they choose peace when they tricked me?
Did they choose peace
No
when
one
they tricked
answered.
me?
Because deep down, everyone knew what was coming. War. The giant prince rose from his seat. If
Oba Esigie,
once the throne, his voice became cold. He will have to defend it. And just like that, Benin began moving towards civil war. Far away in Benin City, the newly crowned
Oba Esigie,
was receiving the same reports. A chief entered the palace hurriedly. My lord,
Oba Esigie,
looked up. What is it?
Arhuanran,
Has begun gathering warriors. The new king sighed, not because he was surprised, but because he had expected this moment for years, ever since childhood, ever since he saw the jealousy growing inside his brother. Esigie dismissed everyone except his closest advisors. Then he asked quietly, how many men can the giant
How many
prince
men
raise?
can the giant prince
The room
raise?
became silent. One chief finally answered, enough
To threaten the kingdom.
The new king nodded slowly, and
Udo,
the king asked, they are loyal to him. The chief replied. The king stared into the distance. He understood something many people did not. This was not merely a struggle between two brothers. This was a battle for the future of the Benin Empire itself. If
Arhuanran,
1. The capital would shift to,
Udo,
the political balance of the kingdom would change forever. And if
Oba Esigie,
lost, everything his mother, QueenIdia, had fought for would vanish. The king stood. Prepare the kingdom. His voice was
Prepare the
calm.
kingdom.
If my brother
If
wants
my
war,
brother wants war,
he paused. Then Benin will be ready.
then Benin will
Years
be ready.
passed. The conflict did not explode immediately. Instead, it simmered, like fire beneath dry grass. The giant prince launched attempts to weaken.
Oba Esigie.
Influence. The new king strengthened alliances. The giant prince gathered loyal warriors. The new king strengthened the palace. Both sides prepared. Both sides waited. Both sides knew the final confrontation was inevitable. During these years, the giant prince found comfort in his family. He had 2 sons. The elder was...
Okpamabia.
The younger was...
Oni. Okpamabia.
had passed away years before the war between his father and...
Oni.
had his father's strength. Stories spread that he possessed enormous strength even as a young man. Many elders whispered that he reminded them of Arhuanran during his youth. The giant prince was proud, very proud. Whenever he looked at his only surviving son, he saw the future. Perhaps destiny had denied him the throne, but maybe one day his bloodline would reclaim it. Years later, around 1510, the long-awaited confrontation finally arrived. The giant prince could wait no longer. The throne remained in his brother's hands. His anger had only grown. His determination had only hardened. He summoned his warriors. The men gathered in great numbers. Weapons gleamed beneath the sun. War drums echoed across.
Udo. Arhuanran.
Stood before them, towering, fearsome, determined. This ends now, the warriors roared. We march on Benin. The ground seemed to shake beneath their voices. Before leaving, the giant prince called.
Oni.
You will remain here.
You will stay here.
The young man looked shocked. Father, you will stay. I want to fight beside you.
To fight
No.
beside you.
Perhaps somewhere deep inside,
No.
he sensed danger. Perhaps destiny was already moving. Perhaps the father simply knew. Whatever the reason, those would become some of the last words he ever spoke to his son. As
Arhuanran.
marched toward battle,
Oni.
watched the army disappear into the distance. Then he smiled, a stubborn smile, the same stubbornness that lived inside his father. And before long, he secretly followed them. The young warrior intended to fight, whether his father approved or not. Meanwhile, the armies finally collided. The long-awaited war had arrived. Steel clashed, war cries filled the air, dust rose into the sky, warriors fell, and at the center of it all stood the giant prince. He fought like a man possessed. Everywhere he moved, enemies scattered. His sword flashed through the battlefield. His name echoed among terrified soldiers. Even after years, he remained one of the most feared warriors in the empire. But then something strange caught his attention. Not far away, another warrior was causing devastation. A young warrior, strong, fast, unstoppable. Bodies fell wherever he went. Enemy soldiers fled before him.
Arhuanran.
Stop! Who was this fighter? Who dared display such power on the same battlefield? His pride awakened, his anger awakened, and without thinking, he uttered a mystical command, the kind he had learned years earlier. The words left his lips like poison. Whoever fights as I fight. His eyes narrowed. Let a sword pierce his chest. The battlefield seemed to pause, for a heartbeat, for a single terrible heartbeat. Then, a cry rang out. A young warrior collapsed.
Arhuanran.
Frowned. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. He pushed through the chaos, past fallen soldiers, past wounded men, past shattered shields, until he reached the body. Then he froze. The world stopped. The air vanished from his lungs. The blood drained from his face, because lying there was
Oni.
his son, the boy he had left behind, the boy he had sworn to protect, the boy who had secretly joined the battle, the boy he loved, dead, by his own words, by his own power, by his own hand. And in that moment, the giant prince finally understood something. Destiny had taken everything, and it wasn't finished yet, for a moment.
Arhuan.
could not move, could not breathe, could not sing. The sounds of battle faded into the distance. The screams, the clash of swords, the war cries, everything disappeared. All he could see was his son,
Oni.
lying motionless before him, the young warrior who had inherited his strength, the son who had secretly followed him into battle, the son he had sworn to protect,
Arhuan.
slowly dropped to his knees. His gigantic hands trembled as he touched the boy's face. No! His voice cracked. No! He shook his son's shoulder.
Oni.
Nothing.
Oni.
Still nothing. The giant prince stared at the wound. Then the terrible truth struck him. His own words had caused it. His own mystical power. His own anger. His own pride. For years, he had blamed destiny. For years, he had blamed QueenIdia. For years, he had blamed his stepbrother. But now, the greatest wound of his life had come from his own mouth. A cry escaped him. A cry so painful that warriors on both sides stopped fighting for a moment. Some had never seen the giant prince afraid. Others had never seen him cry. Now they watched the strongest prince in Benin history break apart before their eyes. He lifted
Oni.
body into his arms, the same way he had carried him as a child, and tears rolled down his face. My son! His voice barely rose above a whisper, my son! But the dead could not answer. The giant prince gently laid him down. Then something changed. The grief became rage, pure rage. The giant prince stood. His eyes burned like fire. His pain became fury. His sorrow became destruction. For hours he fought. Every enemy that approached him was driven back. Every challenge was crushed. Every obstacle was cut down. The battlefield trembled beneath his wrath. Yet even as he fought, his arms became heavier. His strength began to fade. His spirit had been wounded beyond repair, and far away in
Udo.
something else was happening. Before leaving for war,
Arhuan.
had entrusted a powerful mystical object to his household, a magical bell. He had shown it to his wife. If this bell ever rings by itself, he had told her, it means I have been defeated. His wife had nodded, though she prayed she would never hear it. For years the bell remained silent. For years nothing happened. But on that terrible day, after the death of
Oni.
the giant prince made a mistake born from grief, a mistake born from confusion, a mistake born from unbearable pain. The mystical protection attached to him weakened, and suddenly, the bell began to ring, far away
Udo.
inside his home. The sound echoed through the compound, once, twice, again. His wife froze, the color drained from her face. The women around her became silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Everyone knew what the bell meant. The undefeatable prince had fallen. The strongest warrior in the kingdom had been defeated. Tears immediately filled her eyes. No. The bell rang again. No. She shook her head violently. This cannot be happening. But the bell continued, over and over, like a funeral song, like a warning from the spirit world, like destiny itself announcing the end.
Arhuan.
Wife collapsed to the ground. Women rushed to comfort her, but she could not hear them. All she could hear was the bell, the terrible bell, the sound of defeat, the sound of loss, the sound of her world falling apart. Then suddenly she stood, without a word, without explanation. She began to run. The women shouted after her, but she did not stop. She ran through the town, past houses, past markets, past shocked villagers, straight toward the great lake, the lake known as
Odi,
At the western edge of,
Udo,
by the time people caught up with her, it was too late. The grief was greater than she could bear, and tragedy struck the household of.
Arhuanran,
Once again, news spread quickly through.
Udo,
Women cried, men lowered their heads, children watched in confusion. A darkness settled over the town, and nobody knew that an even greater tragedy was still approaching. Days later,
Arhuanran,
finally returned home. The giant prince was exhausted, broken. His son was gone. His dream of becoming king was gone. His army had failed, and despite all his strength, he could feel destiny slipping through his fingers as he approached.
Udo,
Something felt wrong. The town was too quiet. No songs, no celebrations, no greetings, only silence. Then he saw them, groups of people, dressed in mourning. His heart sank. Slowly he approached. An elder stepped forward. Tears filled the old man's eyes. "My prince." The giant prince looked around. Then he noticed the women crying, the lowered heads, the silence, and suddenly he understood. No. The elder lowered his eyes,
Arhuanran,
staggered backward. No. His voice broke. No. He had lost his son. Now he had lost his wife. Everything he loved had vanished. Everything. For a long time he said nothing. The giant prince simply stood there, looking toward the horizon, looking toward the lake, thinking, remembering, regretting. Then slowly, he began to walk. No guards followed him. No warriors stopped him. No one dared. Everyone sensed something sacred was happening, something final, something inevitable.
Arhuanran,
Walked alone toward
Odi,
the same lake that had taken his wife, the same lake that now called to him. When he arrived, he stood quietly at the edge. The wind moved gently across the water. For the first time in many years, the giant prince was calm. No anger, no jealousy, no desire for the throne. Only silence, only reflection, only sorrow. Slowly, he removed the magical bead that had rested upon his chest for years, the bead that symbolized his power, his strength, his protection. He hung it carefully upon the branch of a nearby tree. Then he looked toward the sky. Perhaps he finally thought about all the advice he had ignored throughout his life. No one knows. The stories only tell us that after a long silence, Arhuanran stepped forward, toward the water, toward destiny, toward the end. And the giant prince was never seen again. The lake became known forever as
Iyen'Urho,
a place forever connected to one of the most tragic stories in Benin history. The strongest prince never became king. The greatest warrior lost the people he loved most. And the man who spent his life fighting destiny eventually surrendered to it. But even today, centuries later, the name
Arhuanran,
is still remembered, not because he wore the crown, not because he ruled Benin, but because his story reminds us of a painful truth. Sometimes strength is not enough. Sometimes power is not enough. Sometimes even greatness is not enough. For a man who refuses wisdom can lose everything he is trying to protect. And that is the tragedy of.
Arhuanran,
What lesson did you learn from this story? The moral lessons are: strength alone does not make a great leader. Wisdom is greater than physical power. Ignoring good advice can lead to disaster. Destiny cannot always be fought. Anger often causes irreversible mistakes. Leadership requires patience and self-control. Family rivalry can destroy kingdoms. A single wrong decision can change history. True greatness comes from wisdom. Pride can destroy even the strongest person. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more untold stories from Benin Kingdom history. And before you go, tell me in the comments, do you believe
Arhuanran,
was defeated by destiny? or by the choices he made throughout his life. Thank you for watching.